Welcome to episode 197 of the Hunting Party Podcast. I'm not Arth from the Warcraft Hunters Union.
But I am Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brewhall on Twitter.
I am Alexander from the Hunting Party Podcast.
And today is Saturday, December the 7th, 2013. If you want to participate in the chat room and have your name mangled on the air, just create a cool huntery name and join in all the fun.
Speaking of the chat room, joining us today is Dark Brew, Kitty Butt, Alexander, BM Jager, Cab, Dandara Tiki, Elapide, Gobao, Havtor, Induatis, Lagerwolf, Mib Subaru, Primoc, Roy, Saria, and Slugslinger. Hello, guys. Our lovely moderator is me, Alexander. You can send your questions into me, Alexander, in a private message by left-clicking my name, select PM, and type in the new tab, or send your questions to huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com. Take it away,
Yes.
Dark Brew.
And we will read them on the air. In fact, I think we have one email today. So that will...
Is it from Dan?
It's not from Dan. I forget who it's from.
Well, then we can read it then.
It's not Dan the email. I haven't heard from him in like years. So let's see, announcements today. Yes, so just as a quick note, we are going to take a little bit of a break during the holidays. So December 21st and the 28th, we're not going to do shows on those days, but we'll have a show next week, and then we'll pick up again after the new year, I guess. Is there? Yeah. Yes. In the meantime, let's see. In the meantime, we did the last week's show with Roger Brown was really good. I apologize for the audio quality, and I've done what I can to kind of clean it up. But if there's anybody out there that has this kind of editing experience, send us an email. I'll be happy to provide you the audio and see if you guys can go ahead and clean that up. But Roger stuck around for a great post show, so I'd like to get that edited during the downtime and just release that to iTunes. And last time BRK was here, he stuck around for a pretty decent post show as well. So we'll go ahead and I'll try and get those released sometime during the 21st and the 28th. So, and did I hear you say you heard Arth? I saw him pop on a second ago, and then he disappeared.
Yeah, he disappeared, but hopefully he'll make it back.
All right, so yeah, so it's a very, very, very light news week today. Not much going on. But last week, one of the things we touched upon, of course, was Ghostcrawler leaving Blizzard for something bigger and better, perhaps. And we didn't get really much of a chance to discuss that. But he spent a lot of time on Twitter this past week answering folks' questions about sort of his experience at Blizzard. So I thought it would be good for us to maybe go through some of that and talk about that a little bit.
But yeah, I didn't know for the longest time who Ghostcrawler was, and then it was kind of like, but by the time he left, I kind of liked him. He seemed like a guy who was really trying to communicate with us, and that's really kind of nice because these companies don't talk to us very much a lot of time.
Speaking of communicating, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Hey, welcome.
Hey, yeah, sorry. Sorry I'm late, everyone. There's a blizzard running through the Midwest that destroyed the city that I'm living in, and so a normally 20-minute drive turned into about a 55-minute drive today because people are going about 5 miles an hour. So I was expecting to be back with plenty of time for the podcast, but got back a little bit late. But I'm here now.
Well, welcome to the show. So yeah.
Yeah, you haven't missed much. We just started.
No, you haven't missed much. We've been sort of fumbling our way through things here.
Okay.
I did mention that we weren't going to do shows on the 21st and the 28th, and mentioned about maybe releasing a couple post shows, the one with Roger Brown and BRK in that time frame.
Yeah, actually, the other one that might be interesting of post shows is the Michelle Morrow one, too. Which wasn't very WoW related, but we did go for like 45 minutes, so it was fun.
I think that was released as part of the...
Oh, was it? Cool.
Yes, I'm pretty sure Synth released that whole thing into the episode.
Okay.
And sometimes I do that. This is a little behind-the-scenes stuff here, but it depends on how long it is. Like, if it looks like it's going to turn an hour podcast into like an hour and 45 minutes, sometimes I like to just... And if the post-show isn't as WoW-related as it can tend to not be, I try and do that as a separate thing, rather than take up too much of people's times.
Yeah. Yep. So
I
yeah,
like the post shows, but that's just me.
the good post shows are fun. Yeah, and oftentimes when we have these guests on, they just want to keep talking. They're not on. They're not on every week like we are. So
yeah, like I said, other than the audio quality of Roger's mic, the post show was great last week. I mean, we talked a lot about just raiding and life in Method and what it was like to be in a big time guild like that. And it's he kind of, I mean, that was it. Once he said, he basically takes 2 weeks off of work when he's working, to commit to that. That says a lot right there about how serious those guys go at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I caught some of that. I was there for the first part of the post show. I think you guys went on for maybe another 20, 25 minutes after I left. But I mean, yeah, it's always great when they can stick around and outside of maybe a formal interview setting, just sort of chat about what's going on with them.
Yep, definitely. So we basically got almost no news, hunter-related, WoW-related this week. So what I thought might be good to do, because we didn't spend too much time with it last week, was maybe talking about Ghostcrawler's departure. He spent a little bit of time tweeting this week, answering some questions, and thought might be fun to go through some of them.
Yeah, I did see some of this. It looks like there's more in our show notes here than what I saw via Twitter, but he was talking quite a bit about, and when I did the Goodbye Ghostcrawler post on WHU, I was surprised to see like the different opinions about him. There was actually a lot of negative opinions, but there were also people who seemed to either misinterpret or there were different interpretations of what he did for Blizzard and what his, in what capacity he had control over design decisions and things like that. So that was something that was a little surprising to me, and I know he disambiguated some of that on his way out via Twitter. And it's stuff, some of it's stuff that he said before, but he was definitely a little bit more candid with a few things. So yeah, let's jump into that.
So and he sort of led off by saying, this was Ghostcrawler saying, I'm not surprised the internet doesn't actually understand what my job was. I am surprised it is so certain in its bad assumptions. That was kind of a humorous take on that, I thought. And someone wrote in, said, to be fair, you've not done a whole lot to help dispel the myths. And he said, really? I'm always careful to say we when describing a new feature or game change that the design team is going to make. In which to say, someone replied, well, we always assumed that was the royal we. And he said, oh, no wonder MMOC posters think I'm arrogant.
Yeah, and he was very careful, and he was. I mean, a few times he's reiterated that it's always sort of a group decision, and that there's a consensus. He did report to somebody, so there was someone above him in terms of overall game design. He was, I forget what his exact title was, but he was sort of a director of one part of game design, and then there was another who was kind of his peer. And between the three of them, it sounded like every big decision was a consensus, at least between the three of them, and usually between a lot more of the team. Perhaps people that were answering to Ghostcrawler or one of the others.
Yeah, I thought his official title is like lead systems designer, but again, who knows really what those titles truly mean in terms of what kind of work that they actually do and reporting structure and whatnot. But I interpreted that to mean that he looked at the various game systems and helped, whether in systems being, things like PvE, PvP. I mean, a very, very broad area and really all aspects of the game. And it wasn't just classes and class balance. Like, that just wasn't, which is mostly what people seem to care about and comment on quite a bit, and seem to be the discussions that, well, certainly we here focus on that, and seems to be the kind of things that he got involved in talking about. So he seemed to take the brunt for every buff and every nerf that happened to the various classes that seemed to all come back to him.
Right. And he was listening, and a lot of if you yell out, if you hear 50 different ideas for what needs changed or buffed or nerfed or whatever, how many are you actually going to be able to do in the great scheme of things? So if you're looking at it as, well, did my change get implemented? Probably not, but they were still listening to them and implementing a fair number of things that people were suggesting. So I always sort of said his position, at least in terms of how we saw him, always seemed to be more public relations than actual game design. So I saw it as more like, okay, here's the face of the franchise that's going to take the heat for design decisions, but not necessarily the guy who's making all these decisions. So I always felt a little bit bad for the guy and never thought he had quite as much control over things as people thought. So maybe he actually had more than what I figured. But someone wrote, honestly, I think the number of people happy he left are greatly exaggerated. Most people think it's a loss. And Ghostcrawler replied, I think that's true as well. And yeah, there's been a lot of people that have been like, oh, it's sad to see you go, but good luck and stuff like that. But he said, in my experience, the folks who feel they aren't being heard feel the need to yell louder. And the people that are constantly QQing are going to be the ones that, are heard the most. And the people who are sort of content, or the ones that don't like certain changes but are okay with the overall structure of it, are going to be the ones that aren't speaking as much. So you're always going to hear from that vocal minority a little bit more than the people who are happy about the state of things.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember too that prior to him coming on board, I mean, there wasn't much in the way of developer, player interaction, right?
Oh, there really wasn't. Yeah, there really wasn't.
And that was something that he sort of took on and felt was something that was necessary and would be a good thing. It was just and so he took a lot of hits and a lot of criticism, but he seemed like he was able to handle all of that. It never really got to him. I mean, I'm sure there were times where he was frustrated, but he never really raged out, had some kind of mental breakdown from all the stress and criticism and things like that. I mean, he seemed to be very even-keeled and take everything in stride, and with a goal of making a good game and doing what was right for the game, even if it wasn't right for you as an individual player.
Yeah. I'm kind of looking through this list here to see what else we might be able to hit on quickly, because there is a lot of it. He talked quite a bit with people about the position. It is interesting to see further down here. He says that a hunter was his first character. Now, it's not his main, but it was his first character. That came up when someone asked about, are you going to insta-level someone to 90? And he said, yeah, maybe a prot warrior who tanked vanilla, or the hunter that was my first character. I found that interesting. Yeah,
well, if he's listening, yeah, go for the hunter. Yeah, just that would be it. And just switch over, because and somewhere in here too, he mentioned that he's been playing a holy priest
as his main. His
main. And so it sounds like maybe he doesn't want to continue to do that. There was, one of the things that was interesting there, where someone asked here, said, "Are you healing, heroic content raids without add-ons? I can't live without mouse over macros for all heal spells at the very least." And he says, "I tried to heal without add-ons to get the experience and figure out what changes we need, but I certainly recognize their value." And then someone said, "Well, now that you're no longer a dev, will you be more likely to use add-ons?" And he said, "Probably." So I always thought that was interesting that he sort of played the game, tried looking at it from what could we do to make things better, and didn't necessarily use a lot of add-ons. But most healers I know are very
especially for heals.
Yeah, they need them.
I can't imagine. I haven't done anything Miss Pandaria with my healer, but all through my second tune, and the only other one that I played seriously was my Disc Priest, and all through Wrath and Kata, I needed my add-ons. I can imagine playing my Hunter without add-ons. That's possible, but the heals, no way.
To me, it always seems weird. That it would be kind of weird to be a developer for a game like this, or at least intimately involved with it on that level, and then to actually go and play the game. I think it would be hard to play the game because it so well. I mean, at some point, especially with rating and things like that, I would just assume that he understands these classes, like all the classes, inside and out. That when he goes and that he understands how all these encounters are meant to work and all this, before it's even released, because they're working with it. At some point, it's got to be in some meetings where they're saying, all right, well, this is what the boss is going to do. These are going to be his abilities. These are the timing of it, and this is what we expect to happen. And this is how we think players might go ahead and tackle it.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
but we know all these things too. I mean, once the boss has been made, we know all their abilities because they tell us. We know what's going to happen and everything that they're going to do. But actually doing it, doing the dance, is totally different. So, even if you do know exactly everything that's going to happen, it's just not not the same.
Yeah,
well, I know you still have to execute it, and I don't know that. And we know that he does raid, but I don't know if he raids with. I'm guessing he probably doesn't necessarily do it with other Blizzard people, or maybe he does.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to know if his guild knows that they were raiding with Ghostcrawler, because he didn't release his toon names, and he just said what he played. And I get the sense that he was just raiding with a random guild. Like, did they know that the person healing them was the lead designer on the game?
I really doubt it.
Well, and that's the thing too, because he probably kept this. That's the thing. If he was in some random guild, and that's what I'm saying. And was he the raid leader? And let's assume he's not the raid leader, and all of a sudden, they're going in there. It's like, all right, well, this is what we're going to do. Does he sit there and say, no? Here's what I think we might want to try.
Yeah. How do you hide that? And how much did they figure out? That would be a fascinating question, I think. I want to know who he's playing with. And wouldn't it be wonderful if he was like playing with the same guild for an expansion or two, and then, he goes on to a different job, and then he tells them, oh, by the way, guys, I'm Ghostcrawler.
Yeah.
That would be an unbelievable reveal, but I'm sure we're never going to get to see it.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was probably just a hardcore guild, but I mean, and that's the other question too. Was he even? I seriously doubt that he would have been on trying to be in like a world first type guild. I wouldn't imagine that. But and even then, would there be an unfair advantage if you were to be in that, being able to? I'm not sure there would necessarily, because those guys, they go in the PTR, they interact with the devs and give feedback. So I mean, they have pretty good knowledge about those encounters by the time that stuff hits live anyway, so.
And thus it is revealed. Ghostcrawler's real name is Roger Brown.
Man, well, he already told us his main isn't a hunter, and he doesn't have one at endgame, so everyone thought that he played a mage, but that wasn't true. Apparently, his mage must have been endgame at some point, because he said his mage is like level 86. So his mage has been around, but apparently, at least for Mr. Pandaria, it was the priest. He came dangerously close to actualizing my personal conspiracy theory about the game, and that's that Shadow Priest, somebody in the Blizzard dev team loves Shadow Priest. So if he had said that, like, I would have gone nuts. But yeah, Holy Priests haven't necessarily been OP consistently. I can never remember people QQing too much about Holy Priests, but there was also never a time where it was like, oh my God, Holy Priests, they're so unbelievable. I don't remember a time when people were talking about that or when the numbers supported that. So that's good to know at least.
Yeah.
Really interested in Holy Priest if you're raiding or you need a heal. So it's really hard to be OP as a priest that can do nothing but heal you.
Right.
Because I tried leveling one as a healing priest. And
oh God, yeah.
You can't do it.
Well, you gotta do dungeons the whole way.
Yeah. What I want to know is when he got the Ghostcrawler pet, if he got on his hunter and went out and got it.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on what level his hunter is. I don't know. Sounds like maybe he shelved him for a bit. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's still. I mean, how can you be Ghostcrawler and not have the Ghostcrawler crab? That's just not right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, somebody in the chat room said Holy Priests have just never been bad, and that sounds about right. Like, they've always been solid raid healers. I think, oddly enough, in 5.4 they're decent PvP healers, but that's like the first time in history where that's been the case. So they've always been decent PvE. I'll give them that. I tried it once. I just hated Holy. I could never do anything but disc. And of course I would like level and do my dailies and stuff as Shadow, but when you already have a ranged DPS like a hunter, it never really appealed to me to play Shadow. So Disc was always just so much fun. I never got used to Holy.
Yeah, he mentioned that his tune, by the way, was a human female. Someone asked him what race, gender. So, and he said, human female, I'm not judging, but I personally have trouble looking at a dude's butt for so long. So, which also means he played Alliance, although he may have mentioned that previously that he was
Yeah. So we're narrowing it down. We're looking for a holy priest, human female. So that leaves us with only a few 100,000.
That's it.
Yeah, I've heard that before, like the staring at the butt argument for picking a female character. So like my hunter's a female, but that's not the reason. I'm not staring at the ass, That always seemed a little bit weird to me, but I guess it's a thing because I've heard quite a few people use that logic when picking a female tune.
Yeah, that is not a new thing. I think I've got one female tune. It was and I just made it for this expansion. It was a panda, but for the most part, I played mostly male tunes, all male tunes for the most part.
Yeah, my priest was a human male. Pretty sure my Death Knight was male. He was the only other one that I leveled at all. I've got some like level 5 tunes or something, but I don't count them. But theory is true, says Lagerwolf. Thank you. Thank you for confirming that. Did I DC?
Yeah, as long as you're not making a Tauren female to look at the ass, I think there'd be a problem there.
Hey, don't judge. Don't judge. Maybe somebody's okay. Never mind. I'm not gonna go there. This is going down. This is going to a place that we don't want to go, I think. So, let's see. Questions for Ghostcrawler. Shattered Halls wasn't that big of a problem. The big problems with CC started in Magister's Terrace. Was that? I just picked a question at random here. Okay, BC class design was a ways off. I hated not being able to tank raids with my pally, which was supposed to be a tank too. And Ghostcrawler says, I played a prot warrior at the time, and the guild only ran heroic Shattered Halls with a pally tank and 3 mages. Not fun. Huh. And then Shattered Halls wasn't that big of a problem. The big problems with CC started in Magister's Terrace. And he said I could tank MT fine, but by then we likely outgeared it. Shattered Halls was an issue because we didn't have epics yet. Oh, so they're just talking about rating.
Which is fun. That shows you how much the game has changed and kind of evolved when you're talking about needing epics to run 5-mans, like heroic 5-mans.
Yeah. No, it was BC was a different world compared to pun not intended. But it was a different world compared to what we're playing right now.
It was a much different game. People forget. I mean, you had attunements for raids, so you just couldn't pop into a raid. You had to go get a tune. Those heroics, which were max level 7, you had to be level 70, and you had to have a key to get into the heroic. And those keys were usually tied to reputation. And initially, when it came out, everybody in your group had to have the key. So much different. They eventually loosened all of those restrictions up. But you're talking about a much different philosophy and a much different game back then. I remember with Karazhan. Right? You had to have a key to get into Karazhan, and I think everybody in your group had to have that key. So you had to go through all those quest chains and everything like that to kind of just to be able to get in the door.
I remember when the WHU was new, and we were doing the runs in what's that mountain we always went to, Arth? But every single time there would always be one person in the raid that didn't have the key, and so we'd have to. Like, the raid's at 6, and so everybody show up at 5:20, and if you don't have the key, we'll run you through real fast, and then you have your key, and then you jump through the window, and and then here we go, and gonna go kill Ragnaros. But it was just like almost every week somebody didn't have a key.
Yeah.
But you needed it. Luckily, it was pretty easy to get it.
They got rid of that. They got rid of that at some point, right? Like, that's no longer a thing.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can just go into any of these raids now. It doesn't matter. You don't need to have the keys. What was it? Was it Upper Blackrock Spire that required you to get some sort of key or a tune or something.
Might be.
Like I said, I didn't really do all that during vanilla, so I'm not that familiar with it. But yeah, I mean, it was just different. You had to do all that stuff, which made, by the way, switching tunes, like changing mains, was a real issue for a lot of people. I mean, that was not a small decision whatsoever. You decided to change mains, well, then you had to go through and get that person geared up and get all the attunements and everything on that character as well. So, a lot of work.
Yeah. I'm trying to scroll through all this. There is a ton of tweets here. There's like 4 pages of tweets. I don't think we're going to be able to touch them all. So I'm really just kind of seeing if there's anything in particular that catches my eye. He's still not really saying a whole lot.
No.
So is there any chance you can talk more about the big unannounced feature now? And Ghostcaller says, no, because I still want them to do it. Then they ask, can you talk about Titan? He said, I guess they can't strictly fire me, but it would be in extremely poor taste. So, he's not burning any bridges on his way out, which is smart business, really. I don't blame him at all for not announcing certain things, and I'm sure he knows that the rest of the world doesn't. But
well, that would be curious. I think a lot of people would be to know what happened with Titan, and is it dead for sure, or is it just being re-engineered and rethought of? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Ooh, this is interesting. Apparently transmog was very much a Ghostcrawler thing. Somebody said, wait, was transmog you? Do I have to find you and hug you now? And, of course, he said, everything we do is a group effort, but transmog was something on which I worked a lot. So, it sounds like that's something that he really pushed for and made happen.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Yeah, I had no idea about that.
Yeah, transmog was one of those features when it came out in Cataclysm and really kind of changed the game. I mean, that was like, when you talk about a real positive feature that people like, that's one of them. And it breathed new life into all this old content.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Go and run and just get those pieces of gear.
Yeah, running old vanilla quest chains for something that matches the rest of their just crazy stuff like that. But yeah, transmog's a lot of fun. Even if I don't build a full set, but there's a few pieces I have that are transmogged, and just because I think they look cool, and it makes me feel cooler when I'm running something and I don't have something that looks crappy.
Yeah, speaking of transmog, I mean, I used it a little more this expansion, but it wasn't until recently that I really understood how the transmog UI worked, and so. Apparently, if you go to the transmogrification dude, it basically gives you access to everything. Like first, let's say you want to transmog your helmet, so you just click on a little arrow, and it will show you everything you have in your bank, your void storage. It's all right there. I had no idea for the longest time that that's how it worked. So if I wanted to transmog something, I would go to my bank, I would check my inventory, I would check void storage, and I'd look for the item that I wanted. And I would pull it out into my inventory thinking that that's how I had to do it, and I would transmog that way. I felt so stupid to see that they actually thought about all that, and built into the UI is a nice, friendly, and easy, and very smart way to go about transmogging your gear.
Yeah. Well, it's good that they put that thought in. But transmogging's been interesting. At one point I thought about doing a transmog guide, but there's already so much out there that I don't know what I'd be able to add to it, where people can show how you get certain things. You can go on Wowhead and see what anything looks like, So it ends up being a lot easier to do and figure out on your own.
Yeah, and if you haven't gone back to try and get some of this gear, at level 90 and with timeless gear on up, I mean, so much of the content now is easily soloable. I mean, you could solo a lot of the Burning Crusade raid instances before, but now they're ridiculously easy. They're to the point where you don't even have to think about it. There's no preparation that you would need to do, say as a level 90 hunter. You just need to show up with a pet. It doesn't need to be a tanking pet, and doesn't need to be all this other stuff. You can go in there and just crush everything, and it won't take long if you're looking for some of the tier sets, because especially if the 25-man stuff, because you get bosses that drop tokens usually will drop about 3 of them, so there's a good chance that 1 or 2 raid lockouts and you'll get the full full set of whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I try to keep all my tier stuff that I have. So starting at about Wrath, there's not much that I'm missing if I ever want to go back and transmog into it. But there's actually, I've never been a huge fan of a lot of the Hunter tier sets. Like, I don't think too many of them have looked that good. I think there's just some real cool ones for other classes. That's one of the few gripes I have. And it's not a big one because I never paid too much attention to the look of my tune. But I've found like way cooler tier sets and pieces and things for my priest, for example, than I ever have for my hunter. So outside of some of the weapons, which are very cool, but the armor itself, I always thought was a little lacking for us.
See, I totally agree. And I thought, for Warlords of Draenor that maybe I would go back and do something sort of, go with like a BC set. I said, well, the Gronstalkers, that'll be a good set to go because we'll be hunting Grons once again. But so I went and got all the pieces for that. And I just don't like it all that much. That's the one, if you haven't seen it, it's got the shoulders that have the big eyeballs, moving eyeballs, and the helmet also has a moving eyeball. I just, didn't like the set as much as I was hoping I would, because I thought that would be a cool set thematically to wear in Warlords of Draenor, but I need to find something else. I think the Riftstalker set actually looks kind of decent, but
yeah, I'm trying to go through the different sets, and I'm going through the song from the beginning.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm a Beast Stalker, Dragon Stalker, Crypt Stalker, Scourge Stalker, Wind Runner.
I love that song. Maybe you can do like a piecemeal though, like 2 pieces of this, 2 pieces of that.
Yeah, the problem, I could do that. The problem with it, they don't necessarily match, and color-wise, they don't match, which is, and there's no solution for that. And that would be a nice solution, like the Old Republic Star Wars game has this for their gear. Like you could get like a chess piece, and there's a little button you can click, and it'll basically change the color of your other armor pieces to match whatever your chess piece is, and you can have you can turn one of those clown suits into a very nice, sleek-looking piece of gear.
Yeah.
But WoW doesn't have that option, so it's you have to probably spend a lot of time mixing and matching things just right. Although I'm sure there's some sites out there if I look that will have.
Speaking of hunters and colors, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, and by a little bit I mean a lot, but it reminded me of it. So I had some friends over last weekend, and we went to see the Hunger Games, the new Hunger Games movie, and I haven't read the books, and I had seen the first movie, but wasn't a huge fan. It was just an excuse to get together, and so I live pretty close to a movie theater, and we always do some drinking before we go, and so we were all pretty... Anyway, and so we go, and Katniss Everdeen's talking, and her and PETA talking about their favorite colors. And he goes, so what's your favorite color? And I go, green, because she was a hunter, and I wanted it to be green. And she said green, and I just went nuts in the theater. And, like, my friends had to calm me down. So I thought of that, and I was like, yeah, that's the hunter color, green. But... I thought it was fun at the time. I guess it probably wasn't as big a deal as I thought at the moment.
No, it's fun. It's cool to notice things like that. I'm glad it was green as well, because we all know that the hunter is green.
That is the hunter color, right? Yeah, my priest, I made his color blue, so everything I try to do with him is blue themed. But so let's see. Well, I know outside of this Ghostcrawler stuff. Was there anything? I know you said you listened to the podcast that you didn't get a chance to be in on. Was there anything that was mentioned or brought up or talked about that you wanted to chime in on from those? I know we talked a lot about. We sort of rehashed like hunter talents, the mythic rating. There was a few other things, but it wasn't new news necessarily, but different takes on it.
Yeah, both episodes were good. The one with Michelle Morrow was a lot of fun. She's great as always, and I know you guys were talking a little bit about the WoW movie and some of the WoW lore, and
yeah, it sounds
Allie
like
has been doing a lot of research on the lore and things like that. So
it sounds like Michelle knows something about the movie that we don't, that she couldn't say. There was one line in there.
I got that impression too, that maybe she's like I said, has some inside information, or I don't know, but I kind of got that impression too.
Fingers crossed that she's a part of it somehow.
But I agree with what she's saying, that given a couple of the characters they mentioned, like Duraton and Lothar, and given that time period, that certainly Lady Sylvanas is not yet Lady Sylvanas, and so and I don't know if Sylvanas Windrunner would be part of that story, excuse me, or not. So I could understand how, if that's something she's looking for, just may not be available, may not be written into the story at that point in time that they're trying to tell.
I wouldn't think that she would be, because at that point the elves were just busy with the trolls, with the troll war that they were trying to survive up there.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I mean, they came out occasionally to ask the humans for help, and they really didn't want to do that, but had to. And then they went away for a couple thousand years until the humans came looking for them. So Sylvanas is kind of busy elsewhere. But there's still plenty of other options for humans, females.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, sure. I mean, have they mentioned a little bit about what the story is going to be about then, or what point in time?
It's just something about Jaina's father and all that, so don't know.
I mean, I imagine someone's going to, when they mention, with Duratan being one of the characters, that part of it's going to be probably on Draenor. I mean, I wonder, is it going to be sort of the story of the opening of the Dark Portal, or is it going to be after that? Or
I think we did have an announcement on this, and we may have mentioned it briefly on one of those episodes, but it's gonna deal with the Burning Legion. It might not be like the specific time period of Burning Legion that we know, but I would imagine we're gonna see Draenor at some point in the movie. So it's a little bit earlier.
Well, that's what I'm learning too, which sort of ties in, I think, also with the expansion a little bit with Warlords of Draenor. It seems like they're maybe doing what the best they can to kind of tie all these things together a little bit, either intentionally or a way of drawing interest to one another, or just because. I mean,
Right. Yeah, we'll see. I'll try to dig up that post that I found on it from either one of the devs, or maybe it was something on MMO Champion, and they did have something about what the central plot was going to be about, but I can't remember the details right now. So it's probably in one of the past show notes. I can just dig it up there for like next week or something. But yeah, I was also pleased to hear that pretty much across the board, everyone seems okay with Mythic rating, who's actually possibly going to be doing Mythic rating. So I know we had some reservations about that, but Michelle was all for it. Dielhelm, who was on with us that week, was all for it. Same with Roger, who brought up a couple things that I hadn't thought of, that it might bring some people back, and it'll eliminate the issues with which is more difficult, which is easier, between 10 and 25, which I've actually heard even from more casual guilds, like, oh, well, this is easier on 25, so they have an easier time of it, and we have a harder time because of this and this and this. But since everything else is going to be flexed too, I think they're eliminating a lot of those concerns, and that was something that I hadn't thought about with the introduction of Mythic rating. So I was pleased to kind of be talked off the ledge with that, because I really thought there was going to be more issues, and now I feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah, I think it's a good change overall. I like the fact that the World First rating will now all be kind of on this level playing field. They'll all have that same context with which to compete against one another. It's pretty much going to be settled. Whoever kills the final boss and clears everything first is going to be the one to clear everything first. So, like I said, guilds, this isn't the first expansion where guilds have been felt like compelled to modify their raid rosters in some capacity. Certainly going into, even Wrath of the Lich King, yes, they introduced 10 and 25-man raid sizes,
right,
but
yeah,
because 25-man drop better gear, most people look to form and build 25-man teams. And then, Cataclysm said, all right, we're going to, drop the same level of gear in both raid sizes and try and make the difficulty the same. And a lot of people realized that felt like 10 was still easier, and so they downsized. They went from 25 into 10, and they kind of stayed at that model through this expansion, through Mists of Pandaria, and now it's going to change again. So, I mean, these guilds have gone through this before. It's not fun. It's not necessarily easy, but, most people know the drill.
Look on the bright side. We never have to pug again. So that was for people who've been around long enough to do those on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and again, these sizes now only affect those who are interested in doing the hardest content, just the mythic rating. Whereas before, it was everything that was impacted, and so now it's just this one raid size that you kind of have to build around.
Yeah, and that was actually,
because everything else is flex. So you're going to be able to scale the size of your raid based on who you've got available. Minimum of 10, of course, but you can go any points in between up to 25.
Yeah, that was actually something. I'm looking for the tweet here. I can't find it, but Ghostcrawler said something to the effect of, someone had asked him, "Is there anything you regret design-wise?" He said, "I wish we had introduced Flex before LFR, because Flex still feels like raiding." And he feels like that would have helped out a lot more people sooner had it been implemented sooner. But yeah, I feel like now if you're gilded, you're going to be able to get into a flex run pretty much regardless. If you're interested in raiding and doing everything you need to raid, so there's never going to be an issue there. And LFR is really just going to be marginalized, which is fine because it's terrible. It's a means to an end. But it's not. It doesn't feel like raiding. It's not progression. It can be somewhat annoying, depending on what group you find. I mean, sometimes I just went and won the other day, and it was like the smoothest run I had ever been on, and I barely knew the fights because it was content that I hadn't yet raided. So sometimes it goes really well. But I think the flex is really something that's caught on and will continue to do so, especially now that they're going to have the flex for normal and heroic.
If they had been able to introduce flex before LFR, I doubt that they even would have introduced LFR if they would have even bothered with that.
Yeah, they might not have even needed it. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad to see them expanding on that. That's a big deal. That's a big deal to me, and I think it will be to a lot of other hunters and players, really.
But I mean, the flex has been terrific. I've, been able to do all the bosses on flex, and it really is, you can't ignore the mechanics. They're a little more forgiving than say normal mode, but you still have to run a reasonable strategy, and you have to pay attention to everything that's going on, and you still have that personal accountability and everything that you would expect in a raid. When he says it feels like raiding, well, that's why it feels like raiding, because you have to pay attention to everything. It's not as severe. But it's a great way to learn the fights, and it's a good stepping stone into normal mode. So I just got into a normal mode raid. I've been doing it with the last couple weeks, and the fights are pretty much the same as they are in Flex. So I go in there and I don't have to relearn anything or do anything different. The encounters are basically the same. I just take a little more damage, and the bosses have a little more health and things like that. But the mechanics overall are pretty much the same as they were in Flex.
Yeah.
Which is, you can't say that about LFR. Like, LFR is just, a completely different beast. And you just kind of...
Right, yeah. Tank and spank and whatever. So
it is. I mean, every now and then you have a fight like Darumu or whatever, and then Throne of the Thunder, where he had the big I-beam, and he put this giant maze on the floor. That was very, that was, certainly an LFR killer for sure. They did put in an encounter like that where there was like one thing that you had to pay attention to, and it was not easy to do, and just caused all sorts of rage and nonsense going on in LFR.
Yeah, like I said, I went in the other day to an LFR, and it was something that I hadn't yet rated. Now, I vaguely knew the fights. I've seen all of them in some form, but didn't remember the exact mechanics, hadn't really studied or anything, and was just sort of mindlessly DPSing, and it worked. I did okay on the meters. There were some people who were relatively more geared than me, so I wasn't topping the meters, but I was just sort of mindlessly DPSing and moving out of anything that was quite clearly bad, and that got me through it. Like, I didn't need to know anything, so it just felt like pushing a button for some gear, not actually raiding.
Yeah.
So,
And the fact that they'll have what normal and heroic, so they'll have two different versions of flex. I think it's just going to be. I think raiding is going to be a lot more fun. Come Warlords of Draenor, I think it's going to be much more. I don't want to say casual, but it's just going to be fun. It's just going to be easier, I think, to organize these groups, and they're really done enough changes to focus a little bit on the social aspects of the game, which are really to me what drive the game. I mean, when you're talking about content that requires you to do it with groups of players, it's important to have ways of including as many of your friends and things into this and doing things with those groups as you possibly can.
Can everyone still hear us? The chat room is collectively having like a technological breakdown here. Are we?
It seems to be the ice storms, but
yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's us. I don't know that it's Google per se. It just might be a spat of bad weather. We're still broadcasting.
Yeah, type poop in the chat room if you can hear us.
But I've seen Synth say things aren't looking that great for him, and a couple other people have had issues too. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't talking to ourselves. I was getting more and more concerned every time I saw something. But it sounds like people are figuring out other solutions, at least, that are having troubles with their main form of. Yeah.
Well, there was one thing that I did come across this morning while I was looking around. And it turns out I was wrong, and it looks like Anduin will have something to do with Warlords of Draenor, at least to start. I'm not so sure exactly what's going to happen, but I've been spending a lot of time over at the Timeless Isle lately trying to gear up my hunter and my priest and my other hunter and my other priest. Yeah, I have like 490s. And,
wow.
Yeah.
Good for you, I guess.
Hey, two were hunters. One for Horde, one for Alliance. And but it turns out that with the guy that I've been doing a lot of the questing with, Karaz, who wants to he's building like an hourglass, and you go and you look at events in history and go back and report it back to him. And it seems that this guy is, well, he's a bronze dragon. We knew that. But he was, let me find where I wrote this down. He directs players to use the hourglass as a crux of intersecting timeways in the cellar of the White Dragon Temple, where they perceive a vision of Anduin visiting an imprisoned Garrosh after his trial. With the artifact nearly complete, Kairos hesitantly asks the player to take the hourglass to another crux in time located within the Caverns of Time, where he experiences a final vision in which Kairos stands over the slain body of Sora Dormi, the prime consort of Nozdormu. So it sounds like Kairos is going to be the one who takes Garrosh to start off the whole Myths of Draenor, or Warlords of Draenor.
Yeah, I believe so. I thought they hinted at that at BlizzCon, where someone said, a certain bronze dragon you may have seen on the Timeless Isle, and I assume that that's who they were talking about.
Yeah, there's several of them there, so. But yeah, so. Because somebody asked a question a couple weeks ago about Anduin, so I thought I should mention that. I was wrong. But, yeah, I'm really enjoying the lore of this. I know I can't keep saying that enough, but I really do.
No, that's interesting. And we've talked about the time travel aspect of this before, and that all fascinates me. So I think there's a lot. Who knows? Maybe we'll get sort of a Zelda Ocarina of Time split in the timeline, where there's where we have like the main timeline, and they can do other stuff off in something else. That could be another place they could take this.
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea is alternate timeline here, and the presumption is, well, that somewhere out there, I guess when we go to this Draenor, there must be another Azeroth out there that we will never see, and that all of a sudden no longer has a connection or potential for connection to the Draenor that we're visiting. Like, we're going to go to Draenor, kind of back in time, but that Draenor is now going to be connected to our Azeroth.
Yeah, I don't actually know how time travel's handled. You affect the current. You don't create an alternate timeline when you go back in time. Is that correct? Because there's a few different ways time travel can be handled, and how that works determines what happens to the universe. Then, am I not making sense? You know what I'm saying, right?
You're making as much sense as this whole time travel thing does. So.
Okay. Well, no. So, like different fictional universes handle time travel differently. So, like in one, you can. So it's like the Back to the Future verse, where if you go back in time, you change the current timeline, but you still stay within the same universe. You're just going back and forth in it. Whereas in others, you're actually creating an alternate timeline each time you travel back in time. So.
This is maybe kind of a hybrid approach, I suppose, in that this Draenor is maybe from another universe, so to speak, or an alternate Draenor. I don't know. It's very confusing.
I'm sure we're making it more confusing than Blizzard wants us to.
I tend to look at if we look at the latest Star Trek movies, for example, I think this is going to be more along those lines in terms of time travel.
Yeah, although it's kind of like train tracks.
Seeing our duplicates, if you will. There won't be any like doppelgangers hanging out there.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like train tracks, which they run next to each other, and they can switch over onto each other, but for the most part, they're just separate, and just keep going. And, but we have to run into the Twilight Dragonfly in this. We just have to, because they don't want us messing with time and altering the correct flow. So either we're in the wrong flow right now and they're trying to correct it, or we're about to make a mistake. But speaking of making a mistake, if in this new Warlords of Draenor, someone asks you to collect the Skull of Gul'dan, the Book of Medivh, the Jeweled Scepter of Sargeras, and the Eye of Dalaran, politely decline. Thanks.
Wonder what would happen if nobody did the quest.
Well, I was talking with Dark Brew about this before we started, and I think it was PlanetSide, and they decided to do a revamp of the world. So, as a world event, they did these meteors crashing down, and they would do massive damage to anything they hit, and just smashing people right and left in their little planes and their mechs, and just really amazing, the videos I've seen from it. And when everybody was dead, they closed the servers and rebooted the world as the new broken world that they were going to have. And I always thought, because I didn't play PlanetSide at all, ever, but I always thought that would be a really fun thing to have lived through, kind of like the opening of the thing in Solithis and just some of the other things we've done over the years, and how really amazing that would be. By the way, those 4 artifacts were used to basically open the portal for the second time and break up Draenor into the Outlands, which is why we don't really want to do that. Or maybe we do, but still.
Yeah,
I think
and
that
that's
would be
sort
fun.
of the thing. Is that even a possibility? I mean, for all of that to happen again, and what is the threat and the ramifications for us sort of going back to this Draenor? Obviously, it reintroduces us to folks that we thought we had dealt with and gotten rid of. So Kil'jaeden all of a sudden becomes a big threat.
Deathwing?
Yeah. What was is Deathwing on Draenor, or where is Deathwing at this point in time? I think
I'm not sure.
A lot has to do with, I think, who is where, like who is on Draenor and who is in Azeroth. Because I think the folks in Azeroth are our folks. So someone like Medivh, I don't know that Medivh, if he fits into this at all.
Well, Deathwing is Rathion's father, and if Rathion is involved in this with Kairaz, then it's possible that they cart Deathwing along as well. Of course, he's a little crazy, but,
Right, but I mean, but at this point in time, we've defeated Deathwing in our Azeroth.
Yeah, but not in the past.
Right, but our Azeroth this is where the whole thing gets confusing. We're dealing with our Azeroth, so we're starting from a point where Deathwing is dead, and the only thing that exists in the past at this point would be Draenor, not Azeroth itself.
So we got a question about Murder of Crows from a listener. 10 Fox from Area 52 writes, no, sorry, go ahead, continue.
No, actually, we do need to get to the email.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So I think like folks like Medivh, those folks who are dead or we vanquished aren't really an issue, but anyone on Draenor. But then it opens to all other questions too, because we have Draenei who left Outland, who fled to here. So do they exist in both places now? Does Valen exist in Exodar, and does he exist on Draenor as well? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Pretty
much.
But I did tell people this. If anyone's looking to get their lore on a little bit, if you want to read a good book that sort of helps set the stage for Warlords of Draenor, go read Christy Golden's Rise of the Horde. I happened to do that on vacation, and it basically takes place in Draenor. It's a story about the corruption of the orcs and
cool.
Leading up to the original opening of the Dark Portal. But it's all on Draenor. It basically is in the time period that we'll be visiting, presumably, in the next expansion. Only the events that are occurring there may not unfold in the way that we saw in that book. So that book will give you the context of what was supposed to happen, perhaps, or what did happen, and we'll see. It'll give you some good context to see how things maybe unfold differently this time around. So it's a pretty good story. So I would start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of good novelizations of things, and some of which are outside of what we've seen through the games, either the RTSs or WoW itself, since it's come out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a PTR available now, and there's a few things on there. And in the data mine stuff, and again, this is all data mine stuff. There's references to something in Karazhan, and it's gone from like Medivh's birthday bash to Medivh's eclectic boogaloo, and it keeps changing every time they do a PTR patch as to. But there's something about Karazhan and a Karazhan restoration. So don't know if it's real or just something they've planted in there to, throw people, get them talking, or if they actually have something planned with Karazhan and leading up to the next expansion. I hope so. Karazhan's such a cool place.
Yeah, a lot of people love Karazhan. I think it'll be cool if they do something. I think a lot of people are rooting for that. So we did get a question. It is a hunter question from 10 Fox. 10 Fox is from Area 52. It's about murder of crows. He or she says, "Hello, fellow hunters. Was wondering what you guys thought about a revamp of Murder of Crows. I know you were talking about it last podcast, usage and timing to eliminate that pain, and I was thinking about a few different things. One idea is how about putting it as a passive. When a target gets under 20%, crows automatically flock, or have then maybe reset it on a kill or have a 1-minute cooldown or something like that in addition to the under 20%, or have it replace our kill shot button since it automatically reacts as a percentage of a target's life anyways." Also had some ideas of the beast with it. Oh, okay. And Warlock's Metamorphosis. Save that for another email. All right. So this one was about Murder of Crows and ideas to revamp it. And I remember Roger Brown saying he wasn't a huge fan of it right now and that it really wasn't doing much compared to the other talents in that tier. So it may be in need of some attention.
Yeah, and that's where the conversation started. He said he wasn't using it, and we talked a little bit, and he just didn't like how it functioned mechanically. And the idea is, if you happen to cast it on a target that's 20% health or below, it reduces the cooldown of the ability to like 1 minute. And he didn't see a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
For other talents in that tier.
I don't know. It feels like, I mean, at first it was the focused involved with it, and then right. But we would have, but that was when we had readiness and we could pair it with like Bestial Wrath so we could get it at a discount, but now we don't have readiness, and it's never felt entirely intuitive. It's been really hard to figure out what its niche is, and it looks the coolest. It looks awesome. That giant flock of crows, it feels cool, but I've never really used it with great success. I've kind of avoided it as well. I don't know that making it, I'm very wary of making things passives, because we have so much between our pets and our auto shot and other passive procs and things of that nature. We have so much passive damage already that I mean, it amounts to well over, especially in Beastmaster with the pet damage, it amounts to well over 50% of our damage. And of course, like auto shot damage does more in Marksman compared to other shots and things like that. So it's over 50% of our damage to begin with. If we have so much passive damage, then you get into the problem of not button bloat necessarily, but where anything that you're actively doing accounts for so little of your overall DPS that it almost doesn't matter. So that doing the absolutely optimal rotation would then, compared to just spamming Arcane Shot or some equivalent thereof, there might only be like a 3 to 5% difference, or heaven forbid less than that. So we ran into that at one point where people were, and this was when Frost was still around, and he was getting emails of, hey, I've been spamming Arcane, and that was basically all they were doing, and they were getting close to the same DPS as when they were doing their full rotation, and
Right.
one of the problems was that passive damage. So I'm very cautious about saying anything else should be a passive proc, because I want most of our damage to be things that we actively control. And I like that extra control. I like being able to, the good hunters being able to differentiate from the average hunters, being able to differentiate from the huntards, et cetera, with things like this, and the more passive damage. So that's the one thing I'd say there, is that be careful with things like that and wanting more and more passive procs. But I agree that it needs looked at somehow, because it's really underutilized right now compared to what it could be.
Yeah, I agree too, and I mean there was even, I think Roger mentioned that there's some talk of, he spoke to someone about it being removed entirely in the next expansion, and I certainly don't like the idea of replacing kill shot with it. I like kill shot. Kill shot's a fun ability.
It is. It feels great. It feels great to do kill shot.
Yeah, they changed it so it actually does decent damage now for this expansion. It was kind of weak at one point, I think, in Cataclysm. But it's nice because you can only use it basically when you're during a fight, when you're in execute range. And there's something about seeing that ability light up, knowing you can use it, knowing it's you can do it back to back, no readiness or anything involved. And certainly when you're in a raid fight, the end is near, right? You're under 20% and it's close, and it's just cool about that ability. It's got a great name, hits hard, so kill shot I think is not something I'd want to see go away.
I think when we do kill shot, the whatever we're attacking needs to do like this howl of pain, just like a really loud ah.
That's what we need. More sounds in the game.
Yes.
Well, maybe more animations. I don't know. We don't have a lot of differentiation with our shot animations so much, as far as I can tell. Like, I don't know that I notice big difference firing, say, an arcane shot from a kill shot necessarily. That might help. Something like that might be good.
Yeah. Those are smaller cosmetic things, but yeah, it collectively it can increase the ambience of encounters. So all stuff to. They're working on part of that. They are getting more and more animations. I don't know if that's going to include like attack animations, but that's going along with character designs where. Yep. Our outfits are going to be moving more, hair is going to be dynamic now, things like that just give it a little bit more feeling. So any one change isn't a big deal, but collectively I think it can add up and make it.
Yeah, although I think animations can make a big difference. And a good example is, we don't necessarily see it in World of Warcraft, but in the Old Republic, which I play, the Star Wars game, the way they've set the two factions, their equivalent, the Empire and Republic, which is your Horde and
Sure.
Alliance, the classes there are mirrors of each other. So you can have like a bounty hunter on the Empire side, and then you have what's known as a trooper on the Republic side, and they're basically mirrors of each other. Their abilities, but they have different animations. Their ability names are different, but the damage they do the same, and the rotations and everything else is the same. But they feel very different, and they look very different when you play them. And when I say animations and sounds make a difference, that's a good example of how you can take exactly the same class essentially, but give it a slightly different look, and do audio and visual modifications, and they feel like completely different classes altogether when they're really the same. So I would say I wouldn't mind seeing But I don't know that they'll go so far as to change a lot of the shot animations and things like that drastically. But
well, they are changing shot sounds. So
yes, they did mention that they were going to change the sounds.
Yep. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I love guns, but I've occasionally I will admit to transmogging out of a gun every now and then just because of the sound. And I'll get tired of it and not want to hear the bang bang. It's like, all right, I'm going to put a crossbow on here for tonight.
Yeah, my not as big a fan of guns. I'm in the game. I'm going with the bow and arrows for my. That's actually like the last big piece I still have to buy for my hunter, for my big hunter costume that I've been putting together for several months. So I got most of the things in place. I've been thinking about like pistols, sort of the old dual wielding pistol idea, right, that we had collectively as a community, and to sort of just keep holstered in my belt, just some old timey like pirate style pistols or something like that. But I haven't gotten those either. I haven't decided whether or not. I already have so many things attached to my belt on the hunter costume. It's crazy. But I'm going with the bow and arrow. So instead of like a rifle. So I was always a little more partial to the bows than guns. But I'm glad they're looking at the sounds, because those can be a bit obnoxious. Although it was very easy back in like Wrath, when we were having to dance in between auto shots. It was very easy to figure out where your auto shots were based on the sound. But they've gotten rid of that, so that utility is no longer existent. But I do remember trying to sort of stutter step in between auto shots, and the gun sound actually helped at that point, because it kind of cut through the other din going on around you in the fight, so you could do that a bit more easily, and you didn't have to just follow the visual. You could just listen while you were looking at other stuff. Well,
I know we started a little bit late, but we didn't start that late in the series. Yeah. It is after our end time, and I do have errands and things to do.
Sure. So a reminder that there is no show on December 21st or December 28th. We are going to be off for the holidays.
Yep.
So 198 will be next week, and then we'll be back with 199 and 200 sometime in January. And I did it. I think I announced it, or will be soon, on the WHU. No, I guess it's soon. We are planning a big blowout for that with a bunch of people back. We have tentative verbal commitments from a number of people, including Euripides, Frostheim, BRK, Michelle Morrow. I know we want to talk to Zahara, maybe one or two others. So it's going to be a gigantic reunion show, and it'll be a lot of fun. And at the earliest, it'll be January 11th, but depending on people's schedules, we might see it like the 18th or the 25th. So we're okay with waiting if it means getting more people there for it.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll do that one when we know we can get everybody that we want here lined up and available. So we're not going to rush it.
Did we do the other show announcement thing?
No, we haven't done anything like that yet.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Maybe next week then.
Yeah.
So, with that, you have been listening to episode 197 of the Hunting Party Podcast. I'm Arth from the Warcraft Hunters Union.
And I'm Dark Brew from the Brewhall.com and the Brewhall on Twitter.
And I'm Alessander from the Hunting Party Podcast.
All right. Check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, add our RSS feed to your reader, and, of course, all these links are available in our wonderful show notes.
Yep, and if you like us, please don't be shy about leaving us a review on iTunes or YouTube, especially one where you tell us how much Warlocks need nerfed.
You can submit a title for this week's show by emailing us at huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com and have your name mangled on air by professionals.
All right, stay thirsty, my friends, and remember to drink your dark brew lager.
Lochtar Ogar.
And because I'm sure they're particularly angry this week at me for continually saying Nerf Canada, and they dumped a bunch of snow on us, please, 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 Nerf Canada.
Yeah, at least nerf their weather, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, it was just overnight. There was like 1.5 feet on my car. It was ridiculous. And then it rained first, and that froze. So I couldn't get into my car when I was trying to leave yesterday evening. And I literally, it was just frozen solid. I tried like chipping at the frame of the door with my keys, and I have a scraper, but it was in my car, so I couldn't use that. What I ended up having to do was I heated up some water on my stove in a big pot, and I literally poured it over the door frame until I could open the door. That's how bad it was. So it took me like 40 minutes to get into my car and then dust all the snow off.
I can jump shot, BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never worried about my threat, 'cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, 'cause I am hit capped. 'Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top the meters every fight. Raiding and cave dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Gil'jadan, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul, Cthulhu, and Razorgore, Onyxia to Ragnaros. Which one have we killed the most? Kel'Thuzad to Malygos. We even killed a Kama's ghost. Feels like we're getting close, all that running as a ghost. Yogg-Saron, Therian, Sartharian, Megtheridon, Saphiron, Lucifer to Sulfuron.